Imagine paying $100 for a video game that you don't even own.
$100? Are you kidding me right now? Well, actually, if you get 100 hours of gameplay, it's $1 per hour. And the audacity of these gaming executives who make millions of dollars or multi-millions of dollars a year, who then turn around and just act like they're just this poor, struggling Joe Schmo who's just trying to make ends. A lot of gamers would rather pirate a game than pay those prices because a lot of games, the gameplay does not deliver on the promise of the trailer. The game either comes glitchy or broken, and a lot of these games are padded.
And you know, people have a point. As Scorpia, main battle tank over here says, remember when they used to tell us $60 was because they were on a disc, then downloads happened and the price never dropped? The majority of video games made and released to the public now are digital, which means you don't physically own a disc or a cartridge. Instead, you're basically owning a license to play the game on a specific platform, like your console or PC. This is all good and well until you realize that you're paying more than you would have for a license that also includes microtransactions, or as I like to call them now, macro transactions, because there's nothing micro about them anymore, trying to trick the consumers into thinking we're not spending that much of a cost. When it is true, a lot of the things that you're buying via microtransactions end up costing more than the actual freaking game.
If games start to cost $100, I'll simply find other hobbies. This comes after an analyst suggested there is hope in the games industry that GTA 6 could cost up to $100, potentially paving the way for other companies to raise their default prices as well. Personally, I think GTA 6 will be priced at $70 and nothing more. These analysts seem genuinely clueless and shouldn't even have their jobs in the first place.
If something happens to the game, the servers or what have you, and you can't access the game anymore regardless of whether or not you own it, yeah, that John's gone. That's $100, $300, or $500, however high it's gonna go, straight down the drain. So yes, while you can access and play the game and enjoy the experience, the company retains control over its availability. There's always a chance, though, that they can revoke your access under certain circumstances or even censor the game. Imagine situations where the company knows that you've bought their game, they know who you are, and because they don't like you or something, they ban you from playing their game that you paid for. I know that inflation is a thing, right? We all are aware of that. We all understand. And I know that development costs are a thing, but have you noticed how super expensive it is to create video games now? I think most of that is bloat, honestly, because you still have indie games that are being developed for a fifth of the price, or even less, and they're doing superbly. I mean, that pissy game Concord cost $400 million to make, and it looks no different than most mainstream FPSs, if not worse. For some context, and yes, I know this was a long time ago, but Minecraft came out for PC in 2009, and it cost about $250,000 to develop, which is even way cheaper than its competitors were at the time. On top of that, the original game was about $27. And Minecraft is now worth billions. Marcus Notchperson, the creator of Minecraft, was paid $2.5 billion by Microsoft to acquire Mojang, the company that made the game. So yeah, it's worth noting, it cost Notcher's company $250,000 to create, right? And not only did he make a lot of money from Minecraft's sales, but he was also paid outright $2.5 billion by a huge company like Microsoft. Now, I know this isn't something that happens all the time, of course, but even if you don't have a big company stroking your spine and buying you dinner to give away your goodies, you can still make a lot with a very small budget. People are still doing it today. Look at Among Us. Regardless of whether it exploded during the pandemic, it was developed by a very small team with a very small budget, and it became super popular. From what I could find, Among Us had a budget estimated at around $100,000, if even that much. As a matter of fact, the more popular estimate is less than $50,000. Some say it probably is as low as $5,000. And I think it was like $5 for the game, but you can tell games like this aren't graphically intensive. They don't have big bloated development teams circle jerking each other, and they're not hiring these weird shoddy consultant companies to do jack all. The game made over $163 million as of September 2020. Another example is Undertale. which had an estimated budget of $50,000 and primarily started on Kickstarter. I believe it originally cost $10 and it sold around 1 million copies. Stardew Valley was originally $15 and it was developed by one person named Eric Baronet, or Barone, however you pronounce his name. And I think it took him like 4 years. Yeah, about 4 years to make the game. And the estimated budget was around $10,000. And now that franchise is worth like $650 million, or around there, right? Still that's impressive. Other examples include Phasmophobia and Cuphead. There's so many other examples, but everyone is so concerned with the whole AAA thing and the corporate style games that they don't see what's happening. And it's bad enough that these games are bloated, and these AAA games, or so-called AAA games, have prices that are unnecessarily high, even with inflation, because all it is honestly what I think mismanagement and hubris. Let's be honest, these companies are greedy and you're paying out the ass for their poor financial mismanagement while you can't even really own the game. You can't own a physical copy. You can't even own the digital copies. Now, it's not that I'm against the whole digital thing, but years ago you were able to download a digital copy of a game and still be able to play it regardless of whether or not the servers were down or not. I'm talking about single player games specifically. Games that are multiplayer are a whole other different thing because you need online servers to be able to access them and play them and whatever, and that's understandable. And so you're kind of paying for that experience, for the access of the online stuff. But there's no reason why you should be paying for a single player game that you can't download and own and that requires you to connect to the server or launcher to be able to play, and you're paying like your arm and your leg and your tongue and your liver for it. Like, I just don't understand how like prices are getting more expensive and we're paying for things that we don't own. Like, they're trying to employ the whole boiling the frog slowly theory, and people are just accepting this. Like, it's fine. Yes, I'll pay $100 for a game that I don't own. Now, Grand Theft Auto 6 was coming out at the time of this video, and you have rage bait type articles or takes like this claiming that $100 as a cost could be good for gaming.
Week-long diarrhea? My lord.
She belongs to the streets.
Now, I could be wrong, but think about this for a moment. The reason why we've been talking about this is because it needs to be discussed, to be honest. Like, we as people, we're sheep. As long as we're getting a little bit of grass, it doesn't matter if the people stepping on our necks shave off our freaking fur, make us uncomfortable, or eat us. At least we're getting a little bit of grass, right? Which is the bare minimum, while they're getting fat off of our suffering. Just for a little piece of enjoyment and for the illusion that we have freedom and they're actually giving us a good time. So take Grand Theft Auto 5, for example, right? Or most digital copies of games, or modern day games, as we call them. Even with games that have single player mode, most of them have the option for online mode. But let's say you have Grand Theft Auto 5, right? And I could be wrong, so correct me on this, but this is what I've been seeing. If Rockstar Games or its parent company, Take-Two Interactive, were to suddenly go kaput and stop supporting Grand Theft Auto or whatever, the digital versions of GTA, for example, on Steam, Epic Games, the Rockstar launcher, and like all of that, right? They rely on a combination of platform authentication, right? And on Rockstar servers. So you wouldn't be able to authenticate your copy of the game even if you're playing in single player only. Even if you're on offline mode, if you're playing through Steam or Epic and it requires Rockstar's authentication services, because that's how they set their whole system up, you won't be able to access the game that you paid for. So like I said, just think about this for a moment. In single player mode, if you're playing on PC, it checks your license every now and then, right? When you're connecting to Rockstar servers to make sure, oh, you're the owner of the game, you're allowed to play this. And if Rockstar shuts down its servers and they don't release an offline patch, your game becomes unplayable. Congratulations. If you paid $100 for a game, or $70 or whatever, $200, because at that point, we're just going up from there. Let's be honest. You don't actually own the game. So if something happens to the company and they choose to screw you over, you'll never have access to that game again. Never play it again, ever. You spent money on something that you can never get back. Depreciating asset. Because before you could just sell games and make back some of your money. Now it's not even an asset because you can't even resell them, which was a big thing for consumers. And of course, these companies didn't like that because the consumers were making a little bit of money off of that too. Look, can't have that. We gotta have all of it. Let's not pretend that the whole digital thing was strictly for convenience. Games that I purchased from when I was little, or physical copies of games that I purchased on eBay or what have you, and the consoles that I purchased over the years, or the ones I've owned since I was little, I can play them. I still have a collection of those retro games that I can pop out with those cartridges and play forever. When I'm old and gray, I can still pop out those cartridges or those discs, and provided that the console still works, I can still enjoy the game. And those games were like $20. Imagine you pay $20 for something that you own forever, and nobody can ever take it away from you unless they steal it or you yourself lose it, or it gets burned up in a fire or something. It's a physical thing you can hold in your hands. You own it. It's yours.
Really? No, not really.
Now, there's something called a DRM-free alternative, and you can access those on websites like GOG or GOG, as we call it, that don't require online authentication because, as I said, they believe in offering DRM-free games, which means you can download and play the games you purchase without any restrictions. GOG believes that gamers should have the freedom to use their games as they wish, and that DRM can be inconvenient for players. And the whole reason DRM is in place because they're trying to battle piracy, but then by you doing that, you're taking away our option to own it, which kind of increases the need for people to want to pirate games. But anyway, games like GTA 5, for example, are not available in the DRM-free format, and that's just the harsh reality. Without that DRM-free option or an official offline patch, your ability to play a digital copy of a game like GTA 5 long-term, especially on PC, is completely contingent on Rockstar maintaining their servers, or even there being a community-driven solution if the company suddenly shuts down or something. If everything is going digital and they don't want to make hard copies of things anymore, there is no reason and no excuse why they can't allow people to own those copies. Yes, I get piracy is a thing, but you can create a solution that also is convenient for the customers as well. Everything you look at, from your Adobe subscriptions to your movies online, the movies you purchase on YouTube, Netflix, or whatever, Prime Video, you don't ever actually own it. You realize that, right? And there have already been cases of people losing their entire libraries, either from a hiccup or because these platforms don't carry the titles anymore. And even though you paid for it, the company goes under. It sucks to be you. You just lose all your stuff that you paid for. Maybe it's like $2,000 worth of movies that you acquired and stuff, but the company is like, nah, we're not going to support these anymore. Now you got to rebuy all that stuff. Really? So now we come to the whole situation of games costing $100 and upward. And this is not even including these in-game transactions, right, that are not cheap. And I'm not saying the companies are doing this, but people are already having discussions about why it should be done and why games should cost this much. What the hell are these people even thinking? So this article says publishers hope GTA 6 will cost £100 and cause video game price to hike. They mention that in a recent presentation about the current state of the games industry, analyst Matthew Ball claims there is hope among some game makers that GTA 6 will cost anywhere from $80 to $100. And apparently it comes from a presentation where this guy is discussing potential avenues the industry can pursue to improve flagging growth, or their freaking greed. So you can see here, it's a little presentation, but you guys can go ahead and watch it yourself. Now, if this is true, you gotta wonder why there's so much pirating going on. This is kind of why. It's going to get to the point where, because of inflation and people's cost of living going up, by the way, what they're getting paid is not matching the inflation fast enough, people are going to start choosing not to buy certain games, which is what's already happening. Everything is costing more. Living expenses, taxes, everything. People aren't even having kids because it's too freaking expensive just to freaking live and provide for yourself. And now you're asking the consumers to pay even more for a game that's not even worth that much, that they can't even guarantee that they'll own forever, that they hardly have the money to spend on. Meanwhile, these companies keep on making the games more expensive when it really isn't necessary. You know why these games cost so much? Why Concord and all these other games fail? You know why these teams and development companies are floundering and companies are shutting down, like Ubisoft and other companies that are in trouble? Because they don't have any creativity. Somewhere along the line, they only cared about the money and they wanted more of it. So they hired more people, figuring that if they just go bigger, it would just be better. But that's not always the case. As we've seen, some of the biggest titles that have become popular in the last few years, like the examples that I gave, didn't require that much money. Or it was one of, or a few people that had a passion, like an actual passion. It's just not a business adventure for them. It was an actual passion they had for gaming, to make games, to tell a story, that understood gaming and what people wanted, and they made it happen. And I know this is going to sound stupid and like a broken record, but it was also freaking affordable. These games were cheap. It makes more sense to make a free game like Marvel Rivals, where people can choose whether or not they want to spend money in-game for their experience. Like if you choose choose a different skin for your character. That's not something being pushed on you. It's something you're choosing to do. And trust me, people are way more likely to spend money on a skin or in-game purchases for a game they actually like that's good, especially when that game is free. Look at Pal World, for example, right? And I have to mention it because it's one of my favorite games, and one of those great examples. Pal World, which was developed by Pocket Pair, had a development budget of approximately 1 billion yen, which is around 6.7 million US dollars. So they recouped a lot, and they made around 67 million US dollars from that, right? They have one hell of a profit for a game that costs under $30. And yes, while you don't own that game either, I'm pretty sure people would be way more likely with purchasing a license or an experience if it's at an affordable price. But now you're asking people, or you're talking about games costing $100. Even $70 is crazy to me. And you're paying $70 for absolute chicken shit. I'm sorry, but most of the games that are around $69.99, $70, $59.99 now they're chicken shit. I purchased Pokemon Violet from the Scarlet and Violet franchise, and I absolutely love the Pokemon franchise. Let me just start off by saying that. But I fell off that game so freaking hard because compared to the earlier Pokemon games that I played and collected, older retro games like Pokemon Ruby, Fire Red, Sapphire, Emerald, Black and White, etc., the new games are just so, what's the word? Corporate. That's not even a proper way to explain how bland they feel, but I sank all of my time into Pal World, and even my husband, who was not a Pokemon fan at all, played the game with me until there was nothing else left for us to do in the game because they're still adding more stuff to it. And people get mad at me when I say that companies like from the East or Eastern influence usually fare better and attract people more, but I'm just telling the truth. It's not like I'm trying to shill for China or Japan or Korea, even though I love Japan. Yes, I guess in some ways you can argue that I might be a little biased, but when you look at the objective reality of how entertainment is doing over there versus here in the US as a whole, you really can't deny that there is a difference in quality, at least especially recently. How is a company that is based someplace across the sea able to sell their games better here than the US can sell their own games to their own people? Does that make any freaking sense? And all that's going to happen if they make games more expensive and fewer people are buying them because they literally can't afford them right now, other games, especially indie developers and people from across the sea, are going to see this and go, well, damn, this is great. I can just sell my game for way cheaper, and more people will flock to it because it's cheaper, and I'll end up making more profit because people will be more open to buying a game that costs $25 rather than $100. I mean, it's not rocket science. Unless you're appealing to the super rich or something, most people aren't going to be shelling out $100 and $80 back to back to back for games they don't own when there are other games equally as good or better that are going to come out as competition, which will happen, that are a third of the price. Come on now. And we're not talking about like Rockstar style games. Like the games are already freaking expensive. Rockstar at least has detail and they take pride in their games so far. But you know how people like go on strike when there's unfair conditions at work? I think gamers need to do the same thing. I think I'm not going to come out and say like, you know, you should just go pirate, like, cause you know what I mean? But whatever. Anyway, but what I am saying is that we as gamers have to come together and start saying enough is enough. We need to refuse to pay money to these corporations that are mismanaging their funds and putting out the bare minimum while expecting us to just shell out our hard-earned cash when we're not even getting paid enough and we're not even getting the quality that we're paying for. Bro, a lot of us out here are not balling in cash. Some of us are struggling, some more than others. But it's to the point where you have financial responsibilities and you want to enjoy yourself, so you pay a lot of money for the consoles, which are already hiking up in price. But then on top of that, you have to pay $100 for one of their titles. They don't even have big libraries anymore. Every time you buy these new consoles, the libraries get smaller and smaller and smaller. The only thing you can depend on is having the libraries from the older consoles available to play, and they're pretending, oh, look at the big library we have when it was like 2 consoles ago worth of games, because they're not making the new ones fast enough, and they can't because they're too freaking expensive, and they're not good enough to warrant you getting the new console anyway. And I've heard people saying there might be a gaming market crash or something, but honestly, I think it's more like companies are making things unnecessarily expensive, maybe on purpose, maybe not, but it feels like these games don't cost nearly as much to produce as they're being sold for. I don't know, I just have a feeling. People like to make something for $5 and sell it for $100 or $150. You know what I mean? But I feel like what's gonna happen is that they're gonna claim that it's too costly to rely on human labor. And then they're gonna start like beginning to replace jobs with AI to cut all the production costs. And this is going to allow them to compete with other developers who are either already doing it or succeeding by keeping their prices lower. And I can already see patterns. There are a lot of people who have very intellectual brains, and I'm nowhere near their level of intelligence. But one of the things that I pride myself on is being able to notice patterns and cause and effect, consequence of certain things that will happen in the future based on human behavior, psychology, history, what have you, right? I mean, a lot of humans have that. Some of us, it's just dormant, I guess. Sometimes you have to be in a certain state of passion to recognize it. But I can see this happening, right? These companies are going to use their bloated budgets as a reason to phase out human workers and then start implementing the AI into not only managing their companies, but like the production of their games, which is already possible, like making their games. And we got China with the whole DeepSeek thing and, you know, making their stuff open source too, and other countries making their stuff open source. And it makes sense that the whole AGI thing is going to come into the field a lot sooner than we think. And the main motivation, the main motivators of these things coming to pass sooner are money and fear. Fear that someone else is going to do it first and have more power and use it against the person who is afraid of that happening. And I swear to God, if they try to charge the same amount that they would have when humans were doing all the work, oh my God, I swear. I mean, at that point, maybe in 2 years, making a game won't require any programming knowledge and we can all just make our own games and watch the market do its thing. In the next 5 to 10 years, these AAA developers and gaming companies probably won't even exist. Probably. I know that's a massive exaggeration, right? That's probably not true, but you never know. You know, the regular layman will be able to make a game that they're passionate about, and it will take them next to nothing to make it, provided they have the right hardware to run the AGI software. And sure, there's going to be a lot of shit coming out, but then there'll be a lot of good as well. And I'm mostly excited for that future, but I could see that being a problem for a lot of employees and people who went to school for this and are still in debt. They're still paying off their tuition. They're probably going to spend their entire lives deferring and then racking up the interest for tuition that they spent, you know, trying to go to school for this very thing. And it sucks and they're going to get replaced. It's already happening. But people just want good games and entertainment. And while Grand Theft Auto is one of those few franchises that I know people would be willing to pay a lot of money for, I'm still going to stand by the fact that we should be vigilant and mindful about the fact that we're spending more and more money on things in general that we don't possess and that can easily be taken away from us. Jesus Christ. It's almost depressing to be a gamer nowadays. Like, that's why a lot of people speak about situations where, you know, they're making games suck. And I hate that people are just labeled as anti-woke, you know, just because they call out these injustices. Do we absolutely need video games? No, I wouldn't say it's a need. Of course not. There's a lot about the human lifestyle that we don't necessarily need and can do without. But it's fun. And if these companies are going to be asking us for our money, we have a right to criticize them and call out when something's ridiculous. We have a right to strike and explain why we're striking. And if people don't say what is wrong with the industry or why we as consumers aren't buying their stuff or why we don't like their stuff or why something doesn't appeal to us, how do we expect them to get better? As I've said in videos before, if someone who was selling a product, like if I were someone, let's just use me, right? If I were someone who was selling a product and people were not buying it, I would be very frustrated not knowing why they're not buying it. I'd be happy, maybe a little bit distressed, but happy nonetheless if I heard people picking apart my product and telling me exactly why they wouldn't purchase it or why they didn't like it. I wouldn't want to keep sinking my money into making a product that's not functional or efficient and that people don't like. And one thing I would not do is point fingers at the audience or my consumer base and tell them that they're freaking bigots because, oh, I'm a woman, you're not buying my stuff. That's stupid. And that's not really going to make the people buy my stuff, is it? What are they going to be like? Oh, wow, you're right. Shit, you're insulting me. I'm going to buy it right away, madam. Like, that's just brain dead activity. I'm sorry. So that's why people like me and others talk about this. Most of the time, people are lighthearted about it. But if it's an ongoing problem and part of an ongoing discussion, then yes, people are going to keep talking about it because they want to see change. Activists and other people that are going hard for other topics that they're passionate about are allowed to do whatever they want to do, but we're not allowed to speak or criticize. Why? If games and entertainment that are being released are constantly sloppy, then yeah, we're going to constantly criticize them because they keep constantly coming out sloppy. If you're to go to trade school or something and work under someone and you kept on producing horrible work, they're not going to stop criticizing you until your work is no longer sloppy. Jesus Christ, I don't know why this is rocket science for some people. But anyway, this video is already very long. Like, I'm half asleep. Like, But yeah, I want you guys to seriously think about that. I know 2 or 3 of us isn't going to make a difference, but I think if everyone starts being more protective of their finances and making good financial decisions in terms of what they spend their money on for the quality that they're getting, if you value it, then the companies will get the picture and they'll value your money too. They would realize that what they're doing is not working, and we should even more so support those companies and indie developers or developers like Pocket Pair with Pal World that actually do care about their consumers and about their work. Say this with me, people. They're not beholden to our finances. We don't need video games. It hurts me to say that, right? Because my brain is like, excuse me. But no, realistically, we don't need video games to live. Like, it's just the truth, right? However, the people that do make them do need us. They're the ones that are selling a product that they want us to buy. So they should be kissing our feet and doing whatever is necessary to please us as the consumers. It's like when you like a girl, you want to sleep with her, you want to marry her, date her, or whatever. You want to keep your identity and your creativity and everything that makes you, you, yes. However, you are going to have to sacrifice some things and be a little uncomfortable because you want to get inside her. You can't just grab her and pair and like bend her over and be like, all right, I'm taking this. I mean, you can, but there's going to be consequences for that. You know what I'm saying? And that's the kind of energy that these big corporations are giving. Like, they just want to bend us over or impale our skulls with their freaking rancid ass crotch meat. And then after they fill our mouths with the ungodly amount of pudding textured pus that they've released inside of it, they want to like slap us on the cheek and tell us, good boy, good girl, now thank me for being such a generous god. No freaking thank you, bro. Enough of that noise. Speak with your wallet, but also speak with the freaking hole in your face.
They're going to take those games that used to cost so much. It's only going to cost them maybe $5 or $10 to make that same game. Think about it. You're saving 90% of your money by firing 90% of your workforce. Pretend you're paying each one of those employees $50 grand a year. All of a sudden, all of those costs are gone. You're left with just 10% of your employees that you have to pay. Well, at the same time, you just have to, subscribe to the AI Ultron model, right? Who's going to help develop your game, which is a very small portion of that original cost. So for us, the consumers, games shouldn't be going up in price. AAA games, no, my friends. They should be going down.